Hi and welcome back to Speakerstack Music. In this video we're going to continue to create a drum kit in Ableton using the Impulse instrument. This is the third video in a series of three. In video one, part one, we set up the individual drum channels for each section of the drum kit down the right hand side here and added in an Impulse instrument as a template into each of those, and then dropped a drum sample into those Impulse instruments, so you've got an individual part of the drum kit in each track or channel. In video two, part two, we then applied production to each of those parts of the drum kit, such as EQ and compression and reverb. And now in part three, we're going to apply some production to the overall drum sound. So the first thing I'm going to do is we've already set up a number of looping clip sections here in this part of the Ableton arrangement view, but I'm just going to click on the height and width buttons here just to break it down a little bit, make it a bit more easy to work with. That's using height and width at the top there. The next thing I'm going to do is group all the drum tracks together. So we don't want to group track channel one, because that was just as a reference track to show you how you could drop in a pre-set drum kit that Ableton had offered. But we are going to combine channels 2 through to channel 9, and then we can actually then start to apply unifying effects to them. So it's kind of working with them in the same way that you would apply effects to a master channel, but we don't want to apply the effects to the entire song, to all the instruments in the song. You know, if we were to go on and put other instruments in this, such as guitar, keyboard, synths, etc., vocals, we just want to apply some unifying effects to all the tracks for the or the drum parts. So we're going to do that by grouping the tracks. So I'm just going to go into session view, and then I'm going to hold down shift, and then left click on all the separate parts of the kit that we want to group together, and you can see that it's highlighted them. And I'm going to right click and select group tracks, and there you'll see that it's created another instrument channel which has been dropped in, which is called group. I'm going to rename that as drums. So that's given us an overall channel now that we can use to apply effects to all of these different parts. Let's just drag that back up. Fantastic. So rather than dropping any effects for the drum production into the master channel, as I said, we don't want them in the entirety of the song, we're just going to drop them into the drum channel. And in order to do that, we're going to work with some compression and EQ. So click on the left hand side, select EQ8, drop that in, and then I'm now, rather than put in a compressor, I'm going to use a glue compressor, which is a great way of compressing a number of tracks at the same time, and it kind of has the effect of binding them together, making them more of a unified sound. And then I'm just going to press shift, right click, and then I'm going to group those two effects together. The next thing we're going to do is apply some EQ to the drum sound. So let's just have a quick listen to the drum sound and see how it's sounding as it currently stands. Okay, so sounding great, but it obviously it's I think it's sounding quite trebly at the high ends. So an EQ and a glue compressor are just going to smooth out some of those spikes in sound at the high end. So with the EQ, very light touch, I'm going to apply a high pass filter at about 20 Hertz, because we've already got EQ on a lot of the kit and the sounds in the kit, particularly anything that's not the kick drum. So a lot of these parts of the kit are already EQ'd at 100 Hertz. We don't want them going into those sub frequencies, but for the overall drum sound, we do still want to keep quite a lot of energy in the low end. And again, just to remove some of that trebly high end from the mix, just going to roll off the decibel level at around about 1000 Hertz or 1 kilohertz. And then at around 10 kilohertz, just going to lift the sound a little bit. You can see it's just taken some of the high end out of the drum sound. So the next thing we're going to do is add some compression using a glue compressor. And what the compressor is going to do is take out the spikes in sound. So we first of all need to have a look at the range of the decibel range for the sound that's coming through and just see where that range sits in the decibel levels. Kind of see that it's coming through at the lowest point around the 18 decibel, minus 18 decibel level range, through to about -5, -6 decibels. So we're going to tell Ableton to apply compression from the lowest point of that signal range, which is going to be at 18 decibels. I'm just going to move that down to about 18 decibels. That's sounding like quite a lot of compression. So what we're going to do is just secondly roll back the ratio of that. So for every 1 decibel above that threshold, sorry, for every 2 decibels above that threshold, 1 decibel will be allowed to pass through. So very light touch ratio in terms of how we're applying the compression. And then we can also apply attack in a very subtle, soft way, rolling that across to 30, which means that actually the compression that is going through is not attacking the signal at high levels. And then I'm going to switch the release to automatic. Finally, don't worry about the range, because that is about setting the decibel level for the threshold, and it kind of does what this bit does, but in a different way. But we've set the attack, set the release to automatic, set the ratio to 2 to 1. The dry wet part of the glue compressor basically emulates parallel compression. And what parallel compression is where you are mixing up a compressed and uncompressed signal. If you have that at 0, there's no compression happening at all. If you have it at 100%, then everything is being compressed, which I'm going to leave at as 100% at this point in time. But if you wanted to have a more kind of parallel compression setup, then you would have it halfway, and then you could kind of adjust that according to how you want it to sound. Then the final thing we're going to do is just increase the makeup gain, because what compression does is it squashes down the signal. So you're going to take some of the loudness of it out of it. So the makeup gain puts back some of the loudness into the sound. So if I click on that, just take the effects off the mix by clicking on the audio effect chain button there and then play it. You can hopefully hear the difference in the signal. When you don't have the effects applied to it, it's sounding a bit more treble, a bit more high end. But with the EQ and the compressor, you can feel it's a punchier sound. You've rolled off some of those high end frequencies, and it's just punching through as a sound more significantly. So that concludes the 3 videos, part 1, part 2, and part 3, that are to enable you to create your own drum kit in Impulse. In Ableton, we've created the different parts of the kit, which we have here. We've got individual effects on each section of the kit, mainly EQ, with some reverb on some instruments, and that's covered in part 2. And then in this final video, part 3, we've grouped together the entire drum kit, and we've applied some production to the entire kit, involving EQ8 and glue compressor. And the EQ8 is quite light touch, as is the glue compression that we've added to it, but it has made a difference. It's made the sound a lot punchier, and that then will enable the drum kit to punch through more in the mix if you were to add more instruments in. So thank you for watching. If you found the content useful and of value, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel, and I will see you in the next Speakerstack tutorial. Thanks very much.